Hello, this is Diana Jarvis from the Young Reporters Scheme, and today I'm speaking with Krystina Hynda, who did the scheme in 2016. Welcome, Krystina. Thank you for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you for speaking to me today.
You were one of our winners in 2016, and you won a feature article with your article about the homelessness. Tell me a bit about that, because it was a really interesting article.
Well, initially, my article was going to be specifically just for homelessness in London and how the impact it has on society and how we perceive homeless people. But during the time when I was supposed to write that article, it was really cold outside. It really got me thinking of how fortunate some of us have to be to be able to have the basic accommodations and food and everything. And homelessness is really difficult to struggle with and to manage when it's especially near Christmas and during winter time. And I mean, in particular, there was a homeless man that every time I walked by in Chiswick and in Hammersmith, who he was very sophisticated, very well spoken, and he was just really I was just wondering why he got to that place that he did. And I just feel like it was really important to be more aware and for people to understand of people just are in unfortunate situations without any causes or without any particular reasons. And I just wanted to raise awareness of how difficult it must be for those people, and how we as a community could potentially be aware and do things that would make it easier for those people. So yeah, it was really enjoyable. It took loads of research, lots of primary information, primary studies. Yeah, I loved it.
I think you took some stuff down to him, didn't you? And wasn't he very upset, the person under the bridge?
I interviewed 3 homeless people in total. The first one was in Hammersmith. That was under the bridge. His name was Chalky. He actually died, unfortunately, about last month, I think. I received news about that. But he was living there for about 30 years under the bridge, and he just completely isolated himself from civilization. I think my mistake was that I looked, quite not confrontational, but I just had a clipboard in hand because I was ready to take notes, and I had food and I had hot drinks for him with my dad. But I think I was just a bit out of nowhere popped up, and he wasn't really expecting me to be writing things down, looking all official. So I do understand why he must have been shocked. But I didn't actually get to interview him very in detail because he was quite aggressive and not very welcoming. I did get to interview someone else in Chiswick. His name was Mark, and he was just telling me about his migration from Ireland and his life here. So yeah.
It must have been quite humbling to sort of speak to these people, and really good for you to actually do that, because that's quite an in-depth sort of interview to carry out with somebody, in this situation, who could, as you say, take offence by the fact that you were writing about them. But how did it carry on? I mean, presumably you say that they let you know that he died. I mean, why was that?
Well, Chalky was older. I think he was quite old by this year because he lived under that bridge for about 30 years. I saw it on the news article. My mom sent it over to me because she knows I was very passionate about the news article that I wrote for Young Reporter back then. Well, he lived with his family in London, and I think his family was killed under that bridge, unfortunately, really sadly. Oh. And so he lived there for the rest of his life. I think it was just a really unfortunate turn of events for him. I think the root causes of his death was just probably because of old age and disease, because he was just so isolated from the basic societal needs and things. Yeah.
And the other person that you spoke to, Mark, was he quite forthcoming?
He was very welcoming. He was a completely different. So I got the best of both worlds in a sense, because his idea of explaining his situation was more to let people know how he struggled with homeless shelters and finding jobs and job schemes. So his story was that he did migrate from Ireland, and then he had relationship issues with his wife, and so because he left his whole family for that person, he had nothing here. And he was saying how much he struggled with receiving a job, because when you go to a job center, they expect you to have an income or like a household or somewhere where you've got accommodation. And because he doesn't, and he's on a list on the homeless list to receive a job, he was just struggling with it because it's not very organized apparently, especially around Christmas time. So he was very different to Chalky's welcoming.
And he was quite happy to tell you his story.
Oh yeah, he was more than happy to. He was I think he had a guitar, so he played guitar on the street as well, and he was telling us more about his life and how he had a job before. It was like a corporate job, and how it all turned upside down all of a sudden. So it was quite different to what I was expecting, really. And it just shows how people subconsciously probably make judgments or decisions about someone's life without asking about it, without knowing all of the context and the information.
But it must have been interesting for you to do that, because it's, it made you see life from a different perspective, and,
Yeah.
gave you that opportunity as a young reporter to be able to do the interviews. So tell me a bit about what you're doing now.
Well, at the moment, I'm not doing anything reporter related, unfortunately. I do love writing, though. I mean, the Young Reporter Scheme has helped me in every sense of writing and so far, actually. But I'm doing a neuroscience in University of Bristol. I'm an undergraduate at the moment, and somehow that writing has still been integrated into everyday life. So I still use the skills that I gained from them to sort of write my essays, although it's a whole different system, and it's a whole different method I use, but I'm still organizing my time in the way I learned to do during Young Reporter. I just write some articles for my university sometimes, so I still love writing, just more scientific based, really.
And what do you plan to do when you finish? Do you have any plans as yet?
Well, at the moment, I hopefully do want to work in clinical neuroscience or clinical neuropsychology, specifically on brain disease and tumours. They really interest me. But to be quite honest, I think next year is when we kind of focus on what we want to do, and I still want to see all my options. I'm planning to take on Mandarin as well, just to have a broader sense of maybe I want to do a language instead. So I'll see next year, I guess.
Well, it sounds like you've got a lot on your plate, and I really appreciate you talking to me this afternoon. And I wish you all the very, very best with what you decide to do in the
Thank you very
future.
much. It was great talking to you.
This has been Diana Jarvis speaking to Krystina Hynda.